Hi everyone, and welcome to this tutorial by Oxygen Not Included, which is a guide to wild farming and pip planting. This is an extremely powerful way to make unlimited free food as part of a sustainable late game colony. In this video, I'm going to cover everything you need to know to do this yourself. And I need to start by comparing wild and domestic plants. All plants have some requirements for temperature and atmosphere, and some have light requirements too. Domestic plants also need to be fertilised, either with a solid or liquid or both, and you can find this information in the info card and the database. But wild plants do not need any fertilising, so will produce unlimited resources for no input, assuming its environment requirements are met. The downside to wild plants is that they grow 4 times slower than domestic plants, so we will need to plant 4 times as many for the same output. Harvesting can be done to both types of plants and really is necessary for domestic plants. This is because even when ready to harvest, domestic plants still consume resources, so leaving them would be wasteful. As wild ones do not require resources, they can be left to self-harvest, which will happen 4 cycles after growing completes. Now you will have seen wild plants around the map as you explore, and I should say that leaving these in place is not a bad idea. I like to do this for sleetwheat and thimblereeds and collect these as free resources. But to plant new wild ones ourselves, we'll need pips. In maps with a forest starting biome, then they're available right from the beginning. If not, then getting them becomes quite a bit more difficult. In the Spaced Out DLC, they'll need to be brought over from another planetoid with a rocket. Either wrangle one and drop them off into a rocket interior, or take a pip egg into a storage bin. In the base game though, they are very hard to get as they need to be brought back with a biological cargo bay from a living planet in the star map. This map, for example, has the first living planet at 130,000 kilometers. So a hydrogen rocket with 3 fuel tanks is required, although it can spawn closer. To return a pip means researching and using the petroleum and possibly hydrogen rocket, as well as researching the biological cargo bay, making this very late game. Rocketry for both the base game and Spaced Out will be covered in separate tutorial bites. Once we've got pips, leaving them in an area with seeds and natural tiles will give wild plants, but to really optimise this, we need to understand the pip planting rules. I need to credit Nakomaru here, who shared a comprehensive guide to pip planting on the Clay forums, which has informed a lot of this guide. So the rules are: 1. The tile has no more than 2 other plants in a square 6 left, 6 down, 5 right and 5 up. This is the most important rule and is almost always the reason why pips aren't planting where you want them to. To work out if a pip can plant in a tile, it will consider a box centered around the tile. As long as there are 2 or fewer plants in this box, then it can be planted. This includes domestic and decorative plants. Plants are also of different heights. Oddly, this box is not symmetrical, looking 5 right and up, but 6 left and down, which leads to 2 important conclusions. Firstly, this limits how densely we can pack plants in. Using the minimum spacing of 5 tiles, the minimum vertical spacing needs to be 5 tiles apart, or gaps of 4. Horizontally, we need 5 tiles between every 3rd plant. So that gives 2 possible patterns to maximise density, either doing every other tile, or in groups of 3 on, 3 off. As you can see, only 2 plants will then be inside the box, above and to the right. But what I'm also showing is that plants to the left and bottom would block this tile because of the 6 tile range. So this is the second key conclusion, which is that plants must be planted in order from top to bottom and right to left. I'll cover exactly how to do this later. Arbor trees need a slightly different horizontal spacing due to the branches they produce, and are commonly paired with pips for lumber and dirt production. A simple way to plant them is leaving a 2-tile gap so branches can spawn on either side. But the minimum spacing is done as shown in groups of 3. This is slightly more difficult to plant, and I will also cover this later. Another point to mention here is that for the down-hanging Pincha Peppernut and Dasha Saltvines, these are most efficiently planted from bottom to top and right to left, with a 6 tile vertical space or gaps of 5. Rule 2. It's a natural tile of less than 150 hardness, so this can be any natural tile except abyssalite, wolframite, tungsten, corium, diamond, obsidian and neutronium. Also note the pips can plant into far more hydroponic tiles, but these will be domestic plants. 3. The pip can navigate to the seed and the tile, and there must be no buildings or plans obstructing the plant's location. This is useful to control pip planting, as I will shortly demonstrate. 4. The atmospheric pressure is greater than 100 grams. And 5. The atmospheric temperature is within around plus minus 100 degrees Celsius of the requirements of the plant. Meeting these should be easy enough, just don't plant in extreme environments. Finally, number 6. Pips should be enclosed in a room with few other critters. This is something I've learned through experience, so I'm not sure what the exact rule is, but pips sometimes will not plant until the room is closed in. So having covered the planting rules and optimal tile spacing, the obvious question is how to make natural tiles in this pattern. I'm going to cover 4 possible ways, and the first is the easiest and quickest. Simply leave natural tiles in place as you dig, and no more work is necessary. Remember, this will not work with the very hard tiles and may have gaps, but is otherwise very easy if you can plan ahead. If you have already cleared an area or need to fill in gaps, then any of the next 3 methods can be used. The first uses an odd behaviour when deconstructing airlock doors, and it simply needs to have 7 tiles around it in a U-shape. Deconstructing the door then creates a natural tile from 200 kilograms of metal ore. This method is very simple, but uses a lot of resources, which is why I don't use it personally. Now the next method is what I used to use, and is to cook algae or slime into dirt. This happens when algae debris reaches 125 degrees Celsius. To do this, set up storage bins with 25 kilograms of algae or slime and surround them with insulated tiles. Then use the glass forge with insulated pipes to drop liquid glass onto the tiles. The bin can be deconstructed first. When it reaches 125 degrees, a natural dirt tile is formed. The last method is my preferred one, and this is done by putting liquid glass into hydroponic tiles. From the glass forge, there are insulated pipes into a liquid valve, which I've set to 500 grams per second. Normal pipes then carry the glass to the hydroponic tiles, and as the flow is less than 1 kilogram per second, it cannot freeze in the pipes. Once there is a little bit of liquid glass in the tile, simply deconstruct it to make a natural glass tile in its place. So with the pips captured and the tiles made, let's run through the planting process. In following the planting rules, we will plant from top to bottom and from right to left. To make sure only the correct tile is planted, I use storage bins to block them and fill them with a seed each for the pips to plant. Set the filter on the bin and choose 1 kilogram, then copy the settings across all the bins. Ladders can also be used, and the seeds provided another way. Note that sleet wheat grain or nosh beans must be stored in fridges, not storage bins, as they are cooking ingredients. With all these in place, remove the filter on one bin and copy this across them all to drop the seeds. Now deconstruct the first 3 in the top right corner and let the pips plant. Then, the next bin on the top row is deconstructed and planted. Getting this one planted will allow the first plant on the second row to be planted, so we can now deconstruct this bin. This is the key pattern. You can plant a tile if all of the plants to the right are planted and the plant above and 3 to the left is planted. Continuing on this pattern, here is an example of where each row is limiting the one below. Also remember that the plant immediately to the right must be planted too. As a quick tip, if the pips walk too far away, you can use a critter drop-off to wrangle them back to where you want them. There is another step for minimum arbor tree spacing, which is blocking off the middle tree's branches to start with. Each tree can spawn 5 branches in any of the 7 locations around the plant. There is just enough room to do this, but the outer trees must spawn their outer and top branches first. Then once this is complete, the ladders can be removed to allow the rest of the branches to spawn. Not doing this would mean that the outer trees could spawn more branches in the inner tree's space, reducing the lumber generated. Following the pattern through, the farm is now fully planted and the pips can be moved elsewhere. At this point, if the plant needs a specific gas or liquid atmosphere, then pump or bottle empty this in. The final step for a wild farm is to set up the extra systems to keep it sustainable. Auto sweepers and conveyor loaders can be used to automate the collection of the resources, and I explained solid shipping in its own tutorial bite. Because they are wild and consume no resources, the produce can be left to fall off after 4 cycles, and the farm closed in. The other system is cooling, which will counter any heat created by the machines, and potentially lights if farming bristle blossoms. It's also common for the farm to start at the wrong temperature for the plant, so this will help correct this too. Here is a polluted water cooling loop around the farm, and for more information on setting this up, see the cooling tutorial bite. And with that, the farm is now complete and fully sustainable. Another good use for wild plants is in making nature reserve rooms for a +6 morale bonus. Being able to control the placement of these is really useful, and wild plants can be added to ladder rooms which tubes always pass through. Make some natural tiles, give the pips decorative plant seeds, and don't forget the park sign for a useful morale boost. If the rooms are too large, then divide them with open doors. As a final point, there is also a Pip Plant Overlay Mod to briefly mention. I don't use this personally, but as you can see it works by adding an overlay that clearly shows if a tile can be planted, and if not, then why not? This is definitely helpful if you want to use it. So that's a complete look at wild farms and pip planting in oxygen not included. I hope this gets you planting away, and thanks for watching.